Okay, great. It's great to be among friends. It feels very good, and thank you very much for coming. Um, so yeah, the past weeks, Karuna Devi, Prasadachita, Dhanadasa, and Padmatara started us on this path of healing communication applied to the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the blueprint for awakening that the Buddha left us. I like Karuna Devi's striking image of the Buddha's Eightfold Path as an eight-sided mountain with a beacon of light at its peak, each side of the mountain perfectly aligned with the top and with each other. In this image, the light illuminates each side of the mountain, complementing the beauty of the whole. And each week we've been exploring a different side of the mountain to reveal the inherent unity beneath. Each side is a hologram of all the other sides and cannot exist independently of the whole. They are interconnected links pointing to complete integration. And this is an important point because the ego often tries to disassemble the steps and apply them individually to its own agenda. No? Whatever is convenient for the ego, it disassembles these steps. But the thing is that they are completely interconnected. So we've already seen perfect vision or right vision as the light illuminating the mountain. We have a glimpse of clarity, but a glimpse is not enough to transform us. We have to climb the mountain or dive deep into it. And as Sangharakshita says, our spiritual realization is not to be confined to the heights. It has to descend into the depths of our being and transform every aspect of our lives. Next, Dhanadasa presented us with perfect or right resolve, as he put it, or emotion, which represents the descent of right vision into our emotional life. Then last week, Padmatara, in a wise and beautiful talk, introduced us to perfect speech and how when perfect vision descends into our speech, only kindness makes sense and all communication is healing. So with the fourth stage, which is today, of the Noble Eightfold Path, we come from right speech to right action. So this is the third stage of the path of transformation and represents the descent into and transformation of all of one's activities by perfect vision. And tonight I want to invite you to come with me deeper into this eight-sided mountain to see if we can get to where the Buddha was pointing at. Tonight, we're not following a path, we are following a pathless path down, deep down into the mountain. Looking into the self is a bit like that, like looking into a void inside a mountain. And I'm reminded of the book, Journey into the Center of the Earth. This is the descent into the archetypal earth. And for that, we will need all the help we can get. So it is best if we maintain that after meditation state and we keep in mind Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in their compassionate and wrathful states. In particular, let's bring Amoghasiddhi and her consort Green Tara to mind. Green Tara, the Bodhisattva known for her swift, compassionate action, and Amoghasiddhi, the action Buddha of infallible success. Such beings offer us reassurance that the fullness of reality, everything can be responded to with great affection and friendly curiosity. Trust is warranted, not just in their insight, but in their warmth and compassion. And in my experience, the spiritual path is like that. It is a going deep into our experience and opening to deeper levels of mind and opening to the deep inner resources which we all have. It involves a depth dimension of the present moment. And this image balances our mind tendency to wanting to be somewhere else, never satisfied. I know that the Eightfold Path is portrayed as a path, but for now, let's leave the image to the side, because right action requires a change of perspective. A path involves aversion for what is happening now and craving for something else. It also tends to perpetuate this idea that there is a me that is going to this journey, a self that is going to arrive at enlightenment. And sure, we need to motivate ourselves by recalling our situation and where we want to get to in our Dharma life. But then most of getting there involves engaging deeply in what's going on now, looking deeply at what is going on now and turning towards each moment with as much love and care and healing as we can find. If we really give ourselves fully to this moment in this way, we shall find ourselves, when we look up to see how we are doing, we shall find ourselves moving along the path. Because right action is paradoxical because most of us find ourselves leaping out of the present moment into the past or into the future. But right action reminds us that we are not trying to get anywhere. We're just trying to be really deeply, completely here. Right action requires no movement. It requires total surrender. A great Triratna teacher, whom many of you know, Vesantara, his name is Vesantara, once gave a talk on the Polynesians' navigational skills. And that is Triratna for you. You can find a teacher who speaks to you about the 18th century Polynesian navigational system. Well, in this talk, he explained how the Polynesians could make long voyages across thousands of kilometers of the Pacific Ocean, and they could travel to any small island inhabited without using any of the traditional instruments to navigate. Instead, they used wayfinders. And well, to make this a long story short, wayfinders are people with a strong sense of awareness and sensitivity to the conditions of the sea. They are people who, from very early on in their lives, they undergo a long mental training, and become intimately acquainted with the conditions of the sea. The way they train them is that when they are small children, first they put them in pools, in sea pools, just to feel the movement of the sea, just feel it. Then they put them to sit on boats, just sensing mindfully, and that's their training, year after year. And not just the ocean, but everything about it, not the birds, the wind, different strata of currents. So when traveling, the wayfinder sits on the boat, enters into a deep state of meditation, or I don't know, whatever they do. But from deep awareness and sensitivity to the conditions of the sea and all around them, they point the way. All they do is they are in this state and point the way, nothing else. And the others steer the boat, and suddenly they come to an island. No? And the shift in perspective is that as far as they are concerned, the boat doesn't move. The boat stands still. It is just directed to a particular direction. And so they don't go to the island, but it is the island that comes up to meet the boat. So right action points us in that way. We are not trying to go anywhere or do anything. We're just trying to be deeply, completely here, aware and sensitive to everything. And if we do that, I am confident that awakening will suddenly appear like an island. Ego is the one affliction we all have in common. Because of our understandable efforts to be bigger, better, smarter, stronger, richer, or more attractive, we are shadowed by a sense of weariness and self-doubt. Our very efforts at self-improvement orient us in an unsustainable direction, since we can never be certain that we have achieved enough. We want our lives to be better, but we are detained in our approach. Disappointment is the inevitable consequence of when things do not work out. And dreams are a good window into this. They hurl us into situations in which we feel stuck, exposed, embarrassed, or humiliated. Feelings we do our best to keep at bay during our waking hours. Our disturbing dreams are trying to tell us something, however. The ego is not an innocent bystander. While it claims to have our own best interests at heart, in its relentless pursuit of attention and power, it undermines the very goals it sets out to achieve. The ego needs our help. If we want a more satisfying existence, we have to teach it to loosen its grip. There are many things in life we can do nothing about. The circumstances of our childhoods, natural events in our outer world, illness, accidents, loss and abuse. But there is one thing we can change. How we interact with our own egos is up to us. We get very little help with this in life. No one really teaches us how to be with ourselves in a constructive way, right? There is a lot of encouragement in our culture for developing a strong sense of self, like self-love, self-confidence, but simply building up the ego leaves a person stranded. The most important events in our lives, from falling in love to giving birth to facing death, all require the ego to let go. And this is not something the ego knows how to do or even wants to do. But the very ego whose fears and attachments drive us is also capable of a profound and far-reaching development. We have the capacity as conscious and self-reflecting individuals to talk back to the ego. Instead of focusing solely on success in the external world, we can direct ourselves to the internal one. There is much self-esteem to be gained from learning how and when to surrender. Being in close contact with my preceptor and my spiritual friends has given me the opportunity to see this surrendering, which manifests as joyfulness and kindness and all those things I want and that all my friends in the Sangha have. And above else, I came into Buddhism to know what I could do to feel better. I was sad most of the time and I worried I'd disappear. I had this fear of getting lost, in Carl Jung's words, in an archetypal forest. And at the same time, I wanted to get lost, to disappear. Where could I put the weirdness of my own history? I just wanted whole dimensions of myself to go away or underground, the weird and hurt parts especially. These fears were surely primed in my family of colorful personalities where being heard often required enormous effort. Well, it still does. And on my first interactions with my wise and kind Buddhist friends and preceptor, I used to ask my preceptor, please teach me to let go. If I learn to meditate properly, will that help me? My assumption was, and still is most of the time, that letting go means giving up the thing that is bothering me. If I am angry with someone, I tell myself to let go of my anger. If I am anxious, I try to let go of my anxiety. If I am having disturbing thoughts, I endeavor to dispatch them. If I am sad and upset with myself, I try to surrender my unhappy feelings. But my preceptor would practice healing communication with me and just smile or laugh and remind me that letting go does not mean releasing the thing that is bothering you. Trying to get rid of it only makes it stronger. Letting go has more to do with patience than it does with release. With right action, You settle into yourself rather than trying to make the troubling thing go away. If anything drops away, it does so by itself. You cannot make it happen directly. All you can do is surrender. And it's the same healing communication in therapy. The transformation comes when we share ourselves to another person. Resistant was the one charge from my therapist I couldn't ignore. It was the gravest therapeutic transgression. Resistance. Resistance to surrender is what held me back from what I really wanted. Coming to my sessions and sharing myself, all of myself, was what was needed. And if you allow me another ocean metaphor, at the risk of making you seasick, in a book that I'm reading by a Buddhist tulku, he says regarding to letting go of our habits, he says, acknowledge the wave, but stay with the ocean. Stay with the ocean. Just watch, delighted, even though you know the obstacles, the heartbreaks, the sorrows, the jolts. You know these things. Now is your time to watch the wave flow by, but stay with the ocean. Just watch without getting caught in the current. Surrender. Right action sees struggle as counterproductive to its deepest longing and ends that tactic of self through surrender. What could be simpler than surrendering? We surrender all forms of resistance, no? Just surrender of resistance and protest to the conditions of here and now. Right action is the continual surrendering of our separation through all activities of body, speech, and mind, and is more of a release than an action. As long as we think we are in control of our spiritual practice, surrender is the least disruptive behavior we can undertake, because our actions, if not our mind, will be in accordance with right view. Surrender is not associated with a special environment or state of mind and can be done anywhere at any time. To surrender, pause, drop all resistance, and allow the mind to be held within awareness rather than thought. Do not move by reframing, correcting, or altering whatever the mind is doing in this moment. When every state is fully embraced, we find awareness opening around and through states of mind. We surrender the mind to be just what it is. And with the absence of resistance to the mind, awareness is all pervasive. And I remember one of my first experiences, maybe the first experience in the Buddhist world, my first experience. I remember coming to a meditation shrine room for a meditation class. My friend's mom took us with her. I was like 15 years old, or not much older than that. And we stopped in front of a building with very heavy wooden doors. We were, several of us, waiting for the Lama or Rinpoche or who knows what to come and teach. And two men wearing the same saffron tunics stood in front of these wooden doors. And I had the feeling that something momentous was about to happen. Suddenly, the two men stepped up, taking hold of each of the doors as we stood there watching. And in silence, they opened the doors. And there was a long silence after the creak of the hinges. And then, looking out into the void through the carved arch behind the doors, was a tall, elegant, completely calm, absolutely serene, gold-painted Buddha with purple eyes. And those eyes seemed to look out at me with complete understanding, a form of rested presence that was both calm and at the same time absolutely alive. The sight was so breathtakingly beautiful, in my state so profoundly fragile, tormented teenager that I was, that I felt like crying. And maybe I did start to cry. And I also felt a strong impulse, which I unfortunately restrained, to slip to the ground and prostrate. No, so it was that feeling, no, complete release. And I felt like a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I felt happy tears, as if I had found a place on which to rest that could hold not only my incredible weakness and vulnerability, but also my strengths, my will to live, and even my eventual and inevitable disappearing. So this is something I've been thinking more about in recent weeks. The way how our morning meditations and Sangha nights and other activities like poetry reading and like the breakout rooms that we will later have where we dare to be vulnerable and where we can stop. No? Stopping is not passive. Stopping allows us to look at the world as if we have seen it for the first time. Stopping stops us from keeping things alive beyond their appointed time. Stopping makes us realize everything is going to disappear, including ourselves, and enables us to stop trying to act as if we were immortal. We can also read questions like this one by the poet David Ignatow with some patience and new understanding. And here is the poem. I wish I knew the beauty of leaves falling. To whom are we beautiful as we go? So let's stop now, because right action requires us to do so. This is the end of my talk. Thank you. But now we will go to breakout rooms. We'll have we'll have a break, right? Like a 10-minute break. Does that sound okay? 10-minute break.